The winter became too cold for jogging at one year, and I decided I would join LA Fitness. It was bringing my exercise routine inside. It was getting too frigid outside to do what I love to do, and that was the jog. Ed is over here. You're training for a triathlon? No, not a triathlon.
No, half marathon.
Oh, half marathon. So you're jogging, you know exactly what it is like. And maybe some of you do too. To go jogging on a regular basis. But in addition to a swimming pool and treadmills and other forms of aerobic exercise that help keep your blood pressure down and your lungs full of air, I was discovering using weight-bearing machines. And to keep calcium in your bones and to strengthen your muscles. After working right up to the edge of one's limitations on those machines, you feel every sore muscle for the next several days. Right at the point where you don't think you can repeat the exercise one more time, the trainer comes along, has the delightful habit of saying, "You're starting to feel it?" I said, "Yes, I am. Burning." "Okay, well then do 5 more." Not what I wanted to hear. And so I do it anyway. The rule of thumb is simple: no pain, no gain. Has anyone ever had physical therapy following an injury or a surgical procedure? Yes, of course. Oh yes. Anyone who has knows the therapist knows best. At least we trust him or her to do that. Without a physical therapist pushing us to work those muscles by doing more each day, doing it at a safe rate of speed, many of us would be tempted to do less. In order to avoid the pain and the tiredness that often accompany regaining your strength, getting stronger, getting better, becoming well and staying well, the cost is pain. The reward is gain. Many of you are probably familiar with the expression, the cost of discipleship. It is the title of a book written by German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was martyred in a Nazi prison camp near the end, very near the end of World War II. His devout faithfulness to what he believed was right as a Christian person cost him his life at the hands of his captors. He accepted that there are times in the Christian life when one must faithfully accept the pain if there is to be gain. Choosing to follow Jesus is never for the sake of trying to find the easiest road in life, but rather for the purpose of finding the right road to an abundant life whose greatest joy, purpose, and reward or gain is to be faithful to God and to see the results in doing so in the world. Trying to heal the world, helping to heal the world of its ancient wounds. Bella just read to us a passage from the book of Exodus. The more complete story of which those verses are a part is this. The scene is the people of ancient Israel at Mount Sinai on their way to the promised land, a people seeking God's way for them. The gift of God to them is their long trek with their leader. It is the 10 Commandments that is given to them, not 10 suggestions. In fact, I know the Osana family gave me a big plaque. It's in my office. It says 10 Commandments, not the 10 suggestions. The sin of the people is that given these clear directives from God, they choose a different path, a different way that seems better in their opinion. They sculpt a golden calf and they worship it instead. Come to think of it, it would be easier to bow down to a mindless blob of gold sculpture that doesn't ask anything of you than to follow a God who asks a lot and expects action and a faithful attempt to live according to God's directives. Following God's directives often requires a large effort, great expenditure of energy and resources, sometimes self-denial, sometimes sacrifice for the sake of the needs of others. It's a painful thing sometimes to pay the cost, but the gain is wonderful. It's a little like enjoying a beautiful sunset, a peaceful view of the ocean, or the majestic view of a star-studded sky on a dark night. When I was a kid, at one stage of my growing up, I remember wondering why I needed to go to church every Sunday. Because I felt very close to God, just viewing a sunset, an ocean view, or the star-studded sky all by itself, and all by myself. I expressed this idea once to the student minister at my church, and he added a new thought that hadn't come to my mind before. He simply said something like this: one important difference between enjoying the beauty of nature and enjoying a relationship with Jesus is that a sunset doesn't require anything of you. It doesn't require that you take action, or that you give anything, or that you make a sacrifice. Whereas participating in the life of the faith community, those gathered as the church, much is expected in living a life in Christ's name and in doing God's will. There's nothing wrong with the sunsets and the ocean view. It's just that it has to be added to the other two. It is our life together. Getting back to the people who sculpted the golden calf, they made a serious error in choosing to worship a lifeless idol rather than a living God. They apparently thought their choice was the easier, less troublesome, less painful one. The personal cost of discipleship involved in following a lifeless idol was about as much as the personal cost of following a statue that goes nowhere. It doesn't say follow. Some may remember my telling you about a book I used to have in my office. I'm not quite sure where it is, but I remember the book. It's called The Book of Non-Running. Pretty good book. Okay, The Book of Non-Running. At the start of one chapter is a picture of a fellow sitting at a table, non-running, competing with a slice of Limburger cheese on the table. I laughed and I laughed when I saw that. Of course, you have to have that kind of sense of humor to think that's funny. But in a book on non-running, it is funny. And it's an illustration. Sounds a little far out, but no more than a group of people worshiping a golden calf that's leading them nowhere. Except into the dangers of trying to live life without God, placing faith in something that has no power for living, where in fact there was no life and no power at all. That is the danger. That is the danger that we are in whenever we put something less than God in the place of knowing the living God, in the place of authority, in trying to follow it. What are some things that are like idols in your life? Only you can think about that in a quiet moment somewhere. Some Sunday we need to have a dialogue sermon where you can ask a question and we can talk about that. I'm sure you can think of things though. For those ancient people, what could a golden calf do for them except to weigh down their luggage and tire them out carrying it around? At some level, we all have heavy things we carry around with us, many of which we carry into our hearts and our minds, and which affect our relationships. Some carry chips on their shoulders, unable to figure out how to let them go, unable to be healed of a past hurt. choosing to hang on to a grudge, carrying it around sometimes for years, and letting it control their lives rather than their being free of it to do something better. Some carry around unresolved anger behind the mask of a smile rather than allowing God to heal them of this burden so they can get on with doing something much better than carrying that around. Some carry heavy burdens of undeserved guilt, self-imposed because they insist on being perfectionists, unable to accept themselves as they are, as people who can make mistakes. In our daily lives, we are sometimes found spending more energy exercising grudges than exercising Christian love, exercising fear than exercising Christ-like courage, exercising guilt than exercising Christ-like forgiveness of self, and then passing it on to others. A laundry list of other things. Remember the book of non-running I was telling you about? It's a book about those seeking not to exercise, or to exercise without having to exercise. It's a book for those seeking a way of life that demands not much, expects very little, and requires small effort. Nevertheless, the words I hear at an LA fitness center or Planet Fitness or other places like that is no pain, no gain. Trying to find a way to exercise without having to go through the pain of actually exercising is something like trying to grow faith without regular worship. Trying to become good at knowing God's plan for life without ever studying the Bible. Trying to find one's way in life without praying regularly. Having a relationship. Trying to build a personal relationship with God without talking, without meditating, without reading and thinking and reflecting, and sharing our faith with others because we have a lot to learn from them also. Trying to know Jesus without engaging in a devout study and fellowship with others who are doing the same. Or trying to grow strong spiritually without exercising very much spiritual discipline. Exercise that amounts to anything of value requires work, no pain, no gain, and so does discipleship. The following of God with one's life, and at this time of the church year we think about that a lot, because we will be celebrating Palm Sunday, then Maundy Thursday, Good Friday and the Crucifixion, and then the celebration of Easter. Fearing that God might desert the people in the Sinai wilderness because of their unfaithful behavior in choosing a golden calf idol over following God, Moses prayed to God and said, "Without the assurance of your presence, O God, I dare not move from this spot." He was ready to stop the pilgrimage right there if it was going without God. If it was going to be centered upon this blob of gold sculpture. In the Gospel of Luke, it is recorded Jesus is called to several people to be among his disciples, his most devoted followers. They make the decision to commit themselves from that moment to be not only ordinary fishermen who catch fish, but rather to be followers of Jesus who would teach them to fish for people. First they had to realize someone was fishing for them. Jesus was fishing for them, such that then, as a follower, they could fish for others. And spread that good news that can transform not only their lives, but the world as well. And so next Sunday is Palm Sunday. Remember that following Jesus is both wonderful and there is a cost. The cost of discipleship. Amen.